evening, good afternoon. If you're joining us today, thank you for joining us today from 18 different countries. We have over 100 companies joining us for the GigWork Summit. I am your host, Gaurav Deshpande. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at HyperTrack. This summit has been long coming. We have been in GigWork space for over 5 years, and the community has been asking for it. So I'm really delighted to announce the first speaker that's going to share their thoughts with you. That's Kashyap Deorah, founder and CEO of HyperTrack. Kashyap, take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Gaurav. It's really hard to speak into a screen without seeing people, but I'm getting used to this format. It was a fantastic talk by Fritz. Thank you so much. How often do you see successful entrepreneurs share their journey with a room full of people, including many who might compete with him in the same market space? It's really phenomenal. And look, we're all in this as one community, and something transformational is happening in the world right now. It's something revolutionary is happening in the world right now. And we're all part of it. That's the reason I believe we're all here at the GigWork Summit. We have a common mission. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. And some of you are the reason why this revolution is happening. So let's jump right in. The power of the internet is finally reaching the labor market. I think that's the revolutionary thing that's happening. But before I talk about that specifically, I want to zoom back out and go to the beginning of the internet, right? 1993 is when the public internet came to be, about 3 decades ago. From the start, one of the superpowers of the internet is that it levels the playing field with online marketplaces. Its power to create marketplaces. Fritz talked a whole bunch about that, two-sided marketplaces, how he looks at ZenJob as a two-sided marketplace. So you're short-circuiting the connection between consumer and supplier, right, using the internet. This is my 4th company. It's my 4th startup. And each startup so far has been about democratizing market access in some vertical using this power of the internet. So when it comes to the labor market, right, let's zoom in again to borrow from Fritz's playbook of focus, focus, focus. I could not agree more on the power of focus and zooming in. So now from the internet as a marketplace, I want to zoom in to the labor market. In the early days of the internet, there were marketplaces for what you might call gig work, but it was for software engineers to take on projects, right? It was for designers to take on logos. It was for lawyers to take on cases. Writers could write pieces. So you could take on projects 1 gig at a time and get paid per gig, right? And let's call these class of workers white collar workers, for lack of a better word. But then why is it that the same power of the internet did not reach all workers, right? Even after 3 decades, it was restricted to the white collar workers. What about the blue collar workers? Those who are making things happen out in the real world, or as digital citizens and digital nomads might call them, offline workers, right? So the internet leveled the playing field for services that could be delivered online and digitally, but left alone services that were offline. And that's changing now. So the question I want all of you to ask yourself is, why now? What changed? Why not before? So today, the goal of my talk is to share with you my perspective and HyperTrack's perspective on that very topic. So now I'm going to fast forward 15 years from the beginning of the public internet, right? 15 years from 1993, or rewind 15 years from current day. It ends up being the same midpoint of the 3 decades of the internet. So the year is 2008. Get yourself back to that year. We all started carrying mobile phones, smartphones in our pockets. These phones had apps in them that knew where we are. They knew our location with our permission, of course. And then came this one app where customers could press a button and get a ride. It matched your location with that of nearby drivers. One of them showed up. and took you from one location to the other location. Right? It was technology matching locations to route, then dispatch, and then validate that it all got done, all in real time, all using technology, like magic. Not dissimilar from the magic moment that Fritz was describing in his talk. He was on the phone with the retailer, and she said, I want 5 workers on the weekend. And he said, can I, they're available now. I can send them to you now. And she's like, what are you talking about? What kind of voodoo is this? Right. So we all experienced that moment, 2008 onward. So the customer pressed a button to make something happen now. Now, most of us as consumers, right, we're focused on that as the magic moment. But an equally, if not more profound shift and magic moment was that it created a new class of workers, the gig work community, who now had an online marketplace while doing things offline in the real world and making money per gig. In this case, making money per ride. So this is a new class of workers, the gig worker. They either did this for a living, that was all they did, or they did multiple such things for a living, right? Multiple apps, or they just did this on the side while doing something else as their day job or doing something else in their life. And the worker could now switch on and off work as they pleased. And turns out all of this ran on technology, right? Very little human operation. You had a few humans in this big hall in San Francisco that could stare at a big screen and intervene if something went awry, but for the most part, everything ran on technology. Now, turns out this actually became a metaphor for all of e-commerce. At the time, I was immersed in retail and e-commerce. I'd sold a company to a large retailer, and we were always talking about how offline and online commerce will converge, right? And, from the retail industry, from the hospitality industry, we thought the metaphor would come, but it came from the ride sharing and mobility industry. But just the same thing started happening with customers ordering food, ordering groceries, and ordering all kinds of products and services, right? And that started, with ride sharing and then became the on-demand economy. And that became ubiquitous over the next decade or so. So the customer and the worker both had apps on which they tapped some buttons online. Location technology orchestrated things in real time. And the universe conspired to make things happen offline, right? So the power of online marketplaces now got offline. And live location is what bridged that gap between offline and online. And the way things evolved, very few, very well-funded companies, if you go look back at that decade of VC funding, about 50% of all VC funding in the world was directed towards consumer on-demand apps, right? So all these on-demand apps invested heavily in technology of the kind I'm talking about. And they had this as an asymmetric advantage in a very large market. Now, one person's asymmetry is another person's opportunity, especially on the internet, right? It's a democratic, open opportunity platform. So some of us at HyperTrack got an idea saying, how about we use the power of the internet to level that playing field now, right? So we took many years to carefully craft this tech with a lot of love, took a lot of effort, a lot of focus, a lot of saying no, a lot of going deeper into something failing, trying it over again. Our mission was to let builders of products and businesses fulfill their imagination, express themselves and build what they wanted with our APIs as it relates to the gig economy and to the on-demand economy. Yeah. So gig work and on-demand are actually two sides of the same coin, really, if you think about it. So from the customer's lens, it's on-demand. From the worker's lens, it's gig work. Let me just spend some seconds on that. So for customers, you take a previously difficult task, like Fritz was describing, getting temp staff or getting gig workers, and it's now become a press of a button online, leading to things that start to happen in the real world. So I'm calling that on demand. And for workers, something that was previously a full-time job or contracted hourly labor through a staffing agency is also now press of a button online. You press a button and real world jobs start showing up on your digital device, right? I'm calling that gig work. So we built this technology at HyperTrack. We put it on the internet and obviously expected that any company that was trying to compete with these on-demand apps, these big on-demand apps, would use our tech across e-commerce verticals and around the world. And lo and behold, that happened. The consumer part of on-demand happened on HyperTrack, but a bigger trend started happening. We discovered a larger phenomenon that was happening under the surface, right? So if you think about the number of gig workers doing ride sharing, delivering food, groceries in the US as a benchmark, it'd be 15, 20 million people. But the hourly and shift labor, the blue collar labor market is about 70 million people or so. So what we started seeing totally by chance is a lot of our users, the high value users, fast growing users, the kind who ask for features and not discounts, right? The ones you love and they love your tech, can't live without it. They came from industries that were not obvious, for us looking ahead. On the surface, gig workers were delivering rides, food and groceries, but under the surface, every industry, hourly labor, offline workers, field workers were getting reorganized into gig work. From a customer standpoint, it's not just consumers, but even businesses, small, medium, large businesses, they wanted to press a button and make things happen on their time. Get me staffing for those jobs by the weekend. Light industrial workers, factory workers, warehouse workers, shop floor, safety inspectors, equipment operators. Heavy industry workers, think energy, construction, safety and security. Hospitality workers, cooks, bartenders, dishwashers, servers, cashiers, stadium security. Healthcare workers, at-home nurses, hospice, phlebotomists, opticians, pharmacists. Automotive workers, vehicle movers, repair technicians, tire replacement, vehicle servicing, test drives. Public utility workers, electricity, power, cable, internet. Of course, household service workers come to mind, your basement repair, locksmiths, cleaning services. The list goes on and on. So, some of you might think I've pulled a list from some industry report to impress you. This is a list of all the gig workers who are currently on HyperTrack. There are 2 million gig workers in America alone right now with apps on their phones with HyperTrack in it. I tell my team 68 million more to go and hundreds of millions more worldwide. And it's not just online marketplaces connecting businesses with workers, right? If you think about it, the businesses themselves who might be purchasing gig labor, they have their own field workforce, both full-time and recurring staff. They need to manage their workforce better, given the deluge of customers going on demand, right? So more businesses are going through more digital transformation as we speak for their field service management tech to plan, assign, validate work through technology, similar to the on-demand economy. So before I dive a little deeper into that, I want to segue into, as more businesses are becoming online marketplaces as far as labor markets are concerned, and it's about connecting customers with workers, with the supply. Let's take a pause and understand what workers want and what customers want, right? And just get into their head a little bit more. So let me start with what gig workers want, right? Because ultimately you have the two primary participants of the marketplace, and everything in between is the value chain in service of those participants. So I was talking to an entrepreneur who runs an online labor marketplace where customers can connect with workers and pay per gig. She was a retail gig worker herself when she started off early career. And she said, look, blue collar workers want the same things that white collar workers want, right? So first of all, you want to make a living, you make a buck. But really, you want respect, you want dignity, you want flexibility. And to borrow what Fritz said was a focus for ZenJob, both on the customer side and on the gig side, worker side. You want flexibility. That means you want to be treated fairly. You want to get paid commensurate with value. You want to experience the power of meritocracy. Your price tag is not a fixed hourly rate that some staffing agency has decided. It's what the job is worth and the quality with which you get it done and the power to choose what you do, right? So the workers have the power to choose what they're worth and the flexibility to work when they choose. So that's really what flexibility entails here. Now let's move to the customer side of things, right? The customer of gig work and labor is usually a business, small, medium, or large, who's servicing another customer who might also be servicing another customer. So to really get into the psyche of what customers want, I'm actually going to lean into a metaphor from retail and e-commerce, where I spent a whole bunch of time, more than a decade, and which was the genesis of HyperTrack. So the top e-commerce company, Jeff Bezos in his shareholder letters talks about these three pillars of e-commerce. Sam Walton, the top retailer in the world, talks about the same three pillars in retail. What do shoppers want? Price, selection, and convenience. These are the three things that we shoppers want. In the first 15 years of the internet, right, it felt like price and selection were the differentiators for e-commerce. So if you think about it, if you get the right product at the right price, convenience was table stakes. You could wait 2 weeks, a month to get your merchandise, right? If you found the right thing at the right price. But in the next 15 years of the internet, something profound happened with the on-demand economy. All your offline retail merchants, small and large, with their inventory went online. And all your workforce also went online. That ended up commoditizing price and selection. And what emerged at the top was convenience. And I believe a similar phenomenon is happening across industries and across the world. In other words, what used to be the back end, right? Fulfillment, logistics, supply chain, all labor powered, is now becoming the front end. It's becoming the differentiator. It's the reason customers choose to buy from one or the other. And across industries that rely on labor for making this happen, the ability to manage that work appropriately through tech is emerging to be the top differentiator, right? So the internet with marketplaces coming to the labor market now, finally, and within the labor market, the power of technology to drive managing of work is what's emerging as the key differentiator. Again, back to what Fritz said, they have a lot of focus on automation. Right? That's one of the parts of the flywheel that runs the engine. I believe more companies will invest more in technology going forward. Which brings me to my last slide. So in this new world order with gig workers, you're growing at tech scale, and that means you have to invest more in technology. So whether it's scheduled jobs involving full-time employees, like before, your sort of existing work, whether it's short-term projects involving recurring contracts, or it's gig work involving on-demand labor, technology automation to plan, assign, validate work is a must-have now. So end customers get more demanding about making things happen in their time and place. Workers are seeking more flexibility to do things in their time and place. Businesses connecting the two worlds are becoming online marketplaces, really, and they need to get more efficient through technology automation. So to be more clear, the operations management layer for field service, for field work, is shifting from human powered to technology powered, free up the humans to do smarter things. And we're all here in service of building more efficiently growing businesses that give our customers what they want, of course, and more importantly, make lives better for the workers who make it happen for us in the real world. So let's join hands today in unleashing the power of the internet to gig workers. That moment has finally come. Thanks very much for joining us at the GigWork Summit.